AFIS, the Australian Federation of International Students, was established in 2002 to provide support and assist international students in becoming part of the Australian community. The Federation is run by domestic and international students, and today we sit down with President Sander Bredel and some members to discuss the role the organisation has today.
So my name is Sander Bredel. I'm the president of AFIS. I'm originally from Norway, and I've been here for a year studying psychology and politics. And what AFIS, or the Australian Federation of International Students, aims to do is to aid international students in Australia, and we usually go by the term enriching the international student experience. And for us that does follow a lot of different approaches. So we look at information, but we also look at aiding integration and kind of bridging the gap between all the different cultures that are present in Australia, but also for international students to understand the Australian culture, which is quite important. And for us, that's all quite integral to improving and enriching the international student experience in itself. Yeah.
So could you give some examples of some of the events that you guys run?
Yeah, of course. So we usually divide our events up into different streams. So we look at information as quite pertinent, and we do have a workshop series that runs throughout the year, with several installments touching on the key topics that we think are relevant and pertinent for students throughout, regardless of whether or not they're newly arrived or established international students. And then we have another stream of events that we usually categorize under the branding of diversity, so diversity at AFIS, which are quite diverse in themselves, fittingly. So that means that we have fun events that usually either aids integration or multicultural understanding, but also aims to kind of address fun and kind of socializing students as well. So it's an opportunity for students to meet other students as well, which is probably one of the largest challenges that students have when they come here.
Great. And how would you say that the organisation has changed over time?
So we were established in 2002, and at that point there were not so many associations or organizations aiding international students. And AFIS does have quite a unique position, as we're not affiliated to an institution, which means that we can have a holistic approach to how we address international students, and that does mean that we can address the different sectors. So also universities firstly, but also the private sectors, so the TAFEs and the VETs and the LCOS students, which are very significant when looking at the proportions of international students studying here. And naturally we've seen new organizations and more awareness around international students throughout the years, and I think AFIS has played a role in that, but it's also naturally we've been adapting to that, and we're probably seeing a lot more collaboration with other associations, but also other organizations. So there are organizations now that work to advocate for students. So that's the Council of International Students Australia. Whilst we, with them, work on addressing the issues in different ways. And that's probably how we've changed a lot. So the collaboration has become quite important to us.
Excellent. And what do you think are some of those challenges that international students face?
There's a lot of challenges, I think. Usually we do separate them into different time, like in a certain timeline. So looking at when students arrive, there's natural challenges that arise when you move away from home, or when you arrive in a new country. Predominantly so, of course, there's a social isolation component, as mentioned before, but there's also this overwhelming impression of a new culture and a lot of different systems. So, I mean, be that public transport or understanding how, I think public transport is probably a very good indication of that. And we do try and address that as well. And then, like, looking further on, students are usually here to study, which means that there's a strong career component. So that's also something that we address quite a lot, and that we see is quite popular for students to learn more about. So career development and employability, but also understanding your work rights and the support networks that are here, because there are instances and there are a lot of situations and circumstances under which students are constricted to work in the sense that there are visa regulations, which they have to abide. But then it's important for them to understand what their work rights are when they go into employment, to ensure that they're treated fairly and things like that. So we have events to kind of build awareness and also like educate and create literacy in terms of that.
Fantastic.
And then I think moving on and looking further into when students are here, naturally you'll have more and more focus on career development. But also a lot of students that come here are interested in staying here after they're finished with their studies. So that's usually a lot of different things that we address with that. So that can often be language testings, or it can be immigration in general and visa, which people are quite interested in understanding, but which is quite complex to navigate as a student.
Absolutely.
So we do see those are like the 3 installments that we have. Yeah.
Great. And so, what advice would you give for students considering studying abroad or newly arrived international students? Or also, do you have any advice for education providers here in Australia?
I think coming here or going anywhere as an international student and going overseas, I think it's always going to be important to kind of be prepared in the sense that you know that you're going to come to a new place. So doing some preliminary research and having an idea of what you're coming to is always good. Having that said, there's a limit to how much you can get online. There's always going to be that first impression, if that's the climate, which is quite relevant here in Melbourne, which is quite unique in its way, or if it's the cultures that are present here, or if it's the food, or if it's anything like that. I think it's just having that, taking a breather when you arrive and thinking that okay, you might feel overwhelmed, but give it some time, and then at some point you'll feel that you're getting the hang of it. And then I think as an international student myself, it's probably quite relevant to recommend that you get engaged in something, because the biggest difference that students might have when they go into tertiary studies is that the support networks are different, in the sense that you have to take an active role in engaging with people and engaging with sports or recreational things, or if you want to do organizational work. So that's a really good way of of course improving your employability, but also getting out there and meeting new people.
Yeah.
I think for education providers and government, and we've already seen this a lot, there's a big focus and a big should I say importance that they're showing by listening to the students and involving students in dialogues to hear what issues students are having, but also what they're enjoying, because I think a focus for us is to enrich the international student experience, and that for us does, and of course that entails to alleviate issues, but it also needs to add to the experience. And so there's always a plethora of issues that we can deal with, but then we should also think that we should address ways that we can improve the experience of coming here. So that means adding to the actual experience, and I think that's something that has been addressed, and I do encourage people to address even more. So that, yeah.
Great. Okay, and last question. You guys recently received some government funding, so as a result of that funding, what kind of projects, or how have you been able to use that funding?
Yeah, so the funding we received at the end of last year and beginning of this year was through the new grant program that Study Melbourne has just launched, and it's called the International Student Welfare Grants. So they're quite focused on what we've just discussed, so improving the international education experience and aiding international students in general, which means a lot of different type of programs and projects kind of arise from that. And we got this grant was dedicated to one of our signature events, which is called Info Day, or International Student Information Day, which is dedicated to newly arrived international students, which is it's a full day, the event itself, and it's dedicated to kind of providing a one-stop station for all the information that you need when you arrive to Australia as a student. So that when hosting that, we invite a lot of different speakers, and we have stalls, and we have a lot of people coming in to talk about their fields. So we have migration services, and we have the Victorian Police, and we have the City of Melbourne, who has an international student program, or several programs. And of course we invite the Study Melbourne Student Centre, which is the student centre that Study Melbourne offers for students that need support or advice. And a whole range of other organizations like the Victorian AIDS Council and Meld magazine, who's an international student-oriented magazine, and it's a good way for students to get a feeling of what's actually here, to get an overview of both the information, but also where they can get that information later on. So yeah, that's that's how we streamline that funding, and that's an event we have every year.
Excellent.
And we've had close collaboration with Study Melbourne regarding that. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Sander. It's been a delight, and keep up your good work.
Hi, my name is Anshu.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming along to our interview today. So first of all, whereabouts do you come from?
So I come from New Delhi, India.
And can you tell us what has been the most challenging thing about living and studying here in Melbourne?
So the time that I came to Melbourne, I actually knew no one.
Oh my goodness.
So the problem was, making some friends. But the first thing was to, get used to the culture, the environment of Australia, getting to meet new people, finding an accommodation. So yeah, that was the tricky part, if you may. So yeah, that was it. So, and also, understanding the uni culture, uni lifestyle as to how the assignments and the examinations are done and how you actually work on those.
Yeah,
that was it.
And so how is AFIS as an organisation, how have they helped you during your time here in Melbourne?
AFIS has been great in the sense that I've got to meet so many enthusiastic students who are a part of an organization which is committed to help international students, both new and who have been here for some time now. So yeah, it's been great in the sense that we have been able to cooperate as a team and work together as a group of enthusiastic people and work towards a solution. And the solution is to help, and that problem is to help as many international students as possible. So we are dedicated towards that main goal of helping international students.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time. You've been a delight, and I wish you all the best for your future studies.
Hello guys, my name is Hailey Han and I'm the AFIS Ambassador.
And can you tell us what's been the most challenging thing about studying and living in Melbourne?
I think first of all, it's still the language. The language challenge is all the time, everywhere. Because even I study journalism, I still feel I need to study English every day.
And Australian English is a whole other kettle of fish. And can you tell us about your experience with AFIS and how have they supported or helped you here in Melbourne?
I think I'm really lucky to be selected as one of the ambassadors because as ambassador we need to approach students on their campuses to promote our events, our free workshops. So from this experience I become more brave and also I think more talkative. Yes. And also I think AFIS provides so many great events which international students they can benefit from.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much, Hailey.
Reporting from Melbourne, Australia for IEN, Fiona.